Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for clicking on my video. We're going to talk with David Tse. He is the founder of Babylon Chain, part of the Cosmos ecosystem. Babylon claims to bring Bitcoin security to the Cosmos, and the ecosystem is already enabling various security features like replicated security, mesh security. But according to Babylon, this is going to improve proof of stake networks using Bitcoin. Babylon was able to raise funds to roll out this blueprint, and today we'll talk with David, a longtime blockchain tech contributor. And before we get started, just want to remind you down below, if you wouldn't mind, just like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can get some updates when I do roll out these videos. Hey, David, really appreciate you coming on the channel to talk to us about all things Babylon.
Hey, Cosmos Joe, nice meeting you.
All right, so people that watch this, you guys already know. We'll start with some yes or no questions, and then we'll get into the technicals of it a little further into the video. First, yes or no question: does Bitcoin offer the best security of any blockchain right now, in your opinion?
Yes.
Okay. Will Babylon offer the best security of any proof of stake Cosmos chain as it's leveraging Bitcoin security?
Yes.
Okay. Do users need to have a deep understanding of how Bitcoin works in order to understand Babylon's value proposition?
No.
No. Okay. And will Babylon have an airdrop of any kind for Cosmos community?
A long time from now, so not currently. Not currently.
Okay. And last yes or no question. Well, it's one word answer question. Does Babylon compete with replicated security offered by the Cosmos Hub, or is it more of a complement to this?
Complementary.
Okay. All right. I think a lot of people, myself included, were a little bit curious about that, and we'll definitely get into it. So, David, you've been involved in blockchain for a really long time, right? Bitcoin and Ethereum, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Would you mind giving us like a quick 1 minute, kind of recap of what your major contributions or interests are in those two chains?
Yes. So I started doing research. So I'm a professor at Stanford University, just a bit of background. About 4 years ago, I got interested in the blockchain space, decided to start doing research in that area. We created a research group of around 6 graduate students. Right now, we have done a contribution in improving and designing better consensus protocols. One recent example is a collaboration with Ethereum Foundation. 2 years ago, we found some attacks on the proof of stake Ethereum protocol. As you recall, the merge happened only a few months ago, so there was an active period of 2 years that was in designing the protocol. We found some attack vectors, and we started collaborating with them to improve the protocol using our expertise developed at Stanford. So that was one example project. We have other collaboration, for example, with collaboration with Cardano as well in improving the technology. We have a very large research grant from them at Stanford doing research in that direction. And so we have lots of collaboration with different industry groups. Yes.
Cool. And people don't realize, almost we forget, Ethereum is kind of a brand new proof of stake network, right? So
yes.
I guess it shouldn't be surprising that there were some attack vectors that emerged when the merge happened. I want to talk about Bitcoin first briefly, and then get into Babylon. What is it exactly, if you could pinpoint, regarding Bitcoin, what gives it the security? Is it simply just the amount of energy required, hash power required to make blocks, or is it more?
Yeah, so I would say that there are two aspects of Bitcoin that gives it security. One is because it's proof of work. Okay, because it's proof of work, to create a block always takes a significant cost. And so to attack the chain, which usually means creating a fork, a longer fork, takes a lot of energy. And in particular, the longer, the deeper your transaction is into the Bitcoin chain, the harder it is to revert it. So the more work it is to revert it. So
And when you say fork, sorry, when you say fork, you mean to have the miners create a different version of the transaction history. Is that right?
Yeah, so you can think of blockchain, a Bitcoin, as a block is creating in a straight line, right? So ideally, a blockchain block arrives every 10 minutes in Bitcoin. Bang, 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 bang. 10 minutes, it keeps on going. And then you have a nice ordering of the transaction. This is the history. Now, suppose a bunch of miners wants to attack the chain. How does it do that? It will create a fork, an alternate fork, and therefore changing history, changing the history of transactions. That's the typical way of attacking any consensus protocol, but Bitcoin in particular. However, what I'm saying is that because of the fact that it's proof of work, to create such a fork will require a lot of energy, a lot of cost, and you have to have a lot of miners colluding because these miners are fighting against the honest miners, which are bidding on the so-called canonical chain.
Got it. Okay. So because of this, it's only natural that other blockchains or protocols will try to leverage this somehow for their own benefit. I don't want to say it's not making Bitcoin really interoperable with the Cosmos ecosystem necessarily, but you're leveraging one aspect of that that super strong security. Is that fair to say?
Yes. So the interoperability is in some sense interoperability in security, not in terms of the transactions. Yes, not in terms of transactions.
Got it. All right. I want to get into Babylon. People that are watching clicked on the video because it says Babylon in the title, and most people are, Cosmos ecosystem people through and through. You mentioned that the model proposed by Babylon, and we'll get into exactly how it's leveraging Bitcoin, but you said it complements the shared security that the hub is starting to roll out, and that later on Juno and Osmosis will roll out mesh security. How does it complement this and not necessarily compete with what we have in Cosmos already?
Yeah. So as I described, Bitcoin is a proof of work chain. Okay, it's a proof of work chain. So the thing about proof of work chain is that it has a lot of very strong long-range security. So you remember that because as I build block more and more, then it takes me more and more work. Okay. Now proof of stake has an opposite characteristic. It is a very good short-range security because you just require a bunch of people to sign the block, and then that sort of secure the block. Okay. However, the long-range security does not improve over time.
Okay.
You can think of security, composite security is that proof of stake gives you good short-range security. Proof of work Bitcoin gives you good long-range security, and now you have protection in all time scales.
And as far as proof of stake, is that because the network costs are so low compared to Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's because the way the securities get obtained, okay, is the following: is that you have a bunch of validators, okay, let's say 100 validators. As long as they sign on a block, then that block is considered confirmed.
Right.
But no work is need to be done. It's just signing the block. Now, suppose I say, okay, as I wait over time, suppose I say, okay, I want to get more security. Maybe I think that the security is not strong enough. Well, you cannot get more security because 100 people signed already. Waiting one more hour doesn't increase the security. It's still the same 100 people who signed on that block. Okay? Now, in the case of proof of work, however, because it's physics, work is physics. 1 hour means that more work has been done, and it's harder to revert. If I work 10 hours, then it's even more work. So you can see that proof of work allows you to have this very interesting characteristic, which is that, hey, you do have a very important transaction, then by waiting longer, you are more sure that it is the correct part of history. It will never be changed. In proof of stake, you never have this property. So whereas proof of stake is great for fast confirmation of regular transactions, proof of work like Bitcoin is better for securing important transactions, because by waiting longer, you get more certainty that is correct.
Okay. And in proof of stake, I don't know if this is the right way to think about it, but I generally think of proof of stake as being secured depending on the size of the market cap of the chain, right?
Correct.
So the way Cosmos is gearing up to roll out interchain security or replicated security, smaller chains will use the Cosmos validator set and therefore will be benefiting from Cosmos's market cap, right? So they especially in the early days of the new chains, they're never going to have an issue where it's it's economically sensible to try to attack that chain because the market cap compared to the value on the other chain is just such a big mismatch there, right? How does, I don't know if that's the right way to think about it, but how does Babylon fit in?
So, okay. So the market cap of Atom, of Cosmos Hub, is right now about, I don't know, 5 billion, of the order of 5 billion. Bitcoin market cap is 500 billion.
Right.
So there is still a very big gap between Bitcoin and the Cosmos Hub. So Cosmos Hub has the advantage, as I mentioned, that the security it provides is very fast because it's just a bunch of validators signing and with a bigger market cap for Cosmos Hub. So you improve on the fast security, okay? But Bitcoin security is still so high that it's still very worthwhile to use it to protect the long-range safety of the chain. So I would say that they're kind of complementary.
All right. So I think people watching, even if they're vaguely familiar with Bitcoin, it has the reputation for being the most secure chain. Proof of stake has a reputation for being cheaper, faster, and you've kind of laid out the pros and cons in terms of security. Um, what what would be an example of how Cosmos Hub security specifically might pose some type of specific attack vector, and how would that put one of the consumer chains, let's say, at risk?
Okay, let me give an example of an attack vector that the Cosmos Hub cannot protect against, but Bitcoin security can using Babylon. So as you mentioned, that the market cap of Cosmos Hub is protecting a replicated security consumer chain, right? So so imagine, let's say 100 validators of the Cosmos Hub sign on a block. Now, an attack vector would be to say that, hey, I bribe a bunch of them to sign another block, And that's a fork. So that's a fork. So you have two blocks on the same height. That's a fork, okay? Now, the way that Cosmos chains in general, and Cosmos Hub in particular, protect against that bribing attack is that because you are double signing on two blocks, the validators, the bad guys, there's a way for the Cosmos technology to punish the people. They say, hey, you've signed two blocks with the same signature. That means you've done something bad. I will slash your stick. That's the standard protection, okay? So that's why you mentioned that the market cap size is a measure of how much security, because the higher the market cap, the more you can slash, the higher the cost of slashing, right? Because the stake is worth more. Okay. Now, however, there's a problem though, is that people wants to the stick. They eventually wants to leave the system, right? People stick. They don't stick forever. They may leave the system. And in the Cosmos Hub, actually, it's quite frequent that people stick and then they so-called unbond. They remove the stick from the chain. And maybe they want to use the money, the stick, to do other things with it, okay? Now, imagine when the stick is unbond, okay? When the stick is unbond, then what happens is that slashing protection that we had talked about earlier is no longer effective, because the stake has already left the system, so you can't punish it anymore.
That's
right.
Right.
Now, if I go and bribe them to attack the chain, there's a so-called nothing at stake problem, is that the stake is no longer active in the chain. And so you cannot punish them, but yet they can still, the keys can still be used to sign a fork block. So that is the so-called long-range attack. And Bitcoin security, because it's long range, precisely protect against that attack vector.
Right. So then in a simple way to think of this, chains will be able to kind of plug into Babylon and still run their normal smart contracts, normal staking rewards, and whatever other activity goes on to the chain. Will those chains have to enable this? Is it something that goes through governance? How will that work?
Yeah. So we just gone through a governance integration with Osmosis, actually, just about a month ago. So I'm very well aware of that process. I can say a few words there. So first of all, I should say two things. One is, right now we have a test net, and we already have 12 Cosmos chains integrated with Babylon. So the integration process is actually very simple, because we leverage off the most important technology in the Cosmos ecosystem, which is IBC. By leveraging of IBC, it's very easy for consumer chains, for other chains, to connect to Babylon. Now, you asked me earlier whether or not the user has to be very familiar with how Bitcoin works, okay?
Right.
And then my answer was no. And I'll now give you a little bit color of why I say no. It's precisely because of our architecture that Babylon, that is itself a Cosmos chain, is doing the dirty work of interacting with Bitcoin to get the security. And then it is using the security to share with all the Cosmos chains through IBC. So therefore, each individual chain that wants to use Babylon to get Bitcoin security only has to open a standard IBC connection with Babylon, does not require any special additional stuff. Okay?
Got it. Okay. So it'll be basically routine, right? Because these channels are opened, hundreds or even maybe thousands across the Cosmos ecosystem. Eventually, I mean, that makes it very simple then for someone like me to understand. Oh, as long as there's a channel to Babylon, there's the benefit going back to the original chain.
Correct.
Interesting. All right. What will the Babylon chain look like? Will there be smart contracts on it, or is it strictly there to provide security?
Yes, a very good question. In the current testnet, our alpha testnet, there are no smart contract on Babylon. So the only interface of Babylon with the rest of the Cosmos ecosystem is through IBC. Okay, it's through IBC. And this already allows all the IBC enabled chain to get Bitcoin security. Now, however, if you want to interact with Babylon, not through IBC, for example, maybe it's a chain outside the Cosmos ecosystem that does not have IBC, or maybe it's a particular application on a chain that wants to get Bitcoin security for itself. Then we figure out that if we have a smart contract on Babylon, then that could exists as an alternative way for these other applications or these other IBC not enabled chain to get the Bitcoin security.
Got it.
So
So,
in our second testnet, we will put smart contract on it.
oh, okay. So there are plans to test smart contracts,
Yes.
but this will just look like a typical layer one. You'll have your own validator set and your own token. People will be able to stake to the
Yeah.
Babylon validator set. Okay.
Yeah. So on our testnet, we already have right now 15 validators running the testnet together with us, and we'll have more validators. Yeah, it's a standard. Our chain, in some sense, is a pretty our chain is itself actually pretty standard Cosmos SDK chain. There are a few tweaks, but actually the way we built the chain is quite standard, and we're just using IBC in a novel way to get Bitcoin security. So the main novelty of our chain is the interaction with Bitcoin.
Right. And from what I understand, it's Bitcoin in its simplest form, it was designed as a ledger, right? It's a lot different than smart contract platforms are now. You're taking advantage of what the timing mechanism of the blocks. Can you
Yeah.
go into a little bit about that? Because I don't fully understand as someone who's like, I would say I'm vaguely familiar with the tech side of Bitcoin and consensus and all that.
Yeah. Okay, good. So at a very basic level, a blockchain's job, okay, is to provide a irreversible ordering of events. Okay. So events typically in Bitcoin case, events are Bitcoin transactions. Alice pays Bob 1 Bitcoin. Bob pays Charlie 1 Bitcoin, right? These are the events that are recorded on the blockchain. And the main job of the Bitcoin chain is to make sure this ordering cannot be tampered with. Okay. And this is a very fundamental thing, right? Because if everybody can mess around with history, then nobody can trust anything. Okay.
Right. And
And
that's the immutability, right? That's
yes, immutability. Now, the good thing about a consensus protocol like Bitcoin is that actually you can put some. So Bitcoin is used for a particular application, Bitcoin itself, the payment system. But we can leverage off the fact that it is this ordering system, and we can actually put some arbitrary data onto the Bitcoin chain. Okay. And we can take advantage of the ordering. So in other words, what we put in has nothing whatsoever to do with the Bitcoin transactions themselves.
okay.
It is some information that is relevant for Babylon to get the security.
Got it. And then of course the assumption is always going to be these blocks are going to be created every 10 minutes, as long as the Bitcoin network is up, which like we said, it's really the most secure network because it's proof of work. It's the longest proof of work chain, right? So as long as we could rely on that, I mean, in terms of blockchain and crypto goes, it seems pretty reliable, right? Compared to so many new chains where they're almost unproven in a way. Um, then Babylon will always be able to rely on this for their security, and then other chains can, by opening an IBC channel, plug in and derive this benefit. Is that a decent way to look at it?
So it is, yeah, maybe the analogy is that, as you mentioned, right? Bitcoin is a ledger. So what is a ledger, right? It's a ledger, the record of history. And so therefore, I say that, hey, Babylon say I have an important event. The important event is like a creation of a POS block, a proof of stake block. And I would tell Bitcoin, I say, hey, this block is created. And I can tell you that by sending a hash, so-called a cryptographic compression of the block, and submit it as a transaction into Bitcoin chain and just put it there as it's like writing something on the ledger, and say, oh, this block was created on April 6th at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. And by recording all these things, that can help to secure the chain. Because everything in consensus is about ordering, and this
Right.
this really secure ordering gives us an anchor, allows us to anchor everything that is happening on the proof of stake side with respect to the proof of work side.
No, I like that. I mean, recently, I would say like within the last year, you are seeing um, Bitcoin being used by as more than just its original intention, whether it's Lightning Network. Um, Last night we're talking about ordinal inscriptions, and now we have stacks, right? Trying to leverage Bitcoin to run smart contracts, but now Cosmos, right? Cosmos is going to have a benefit from the Bitcoin network as well through Babylon. And the way that I see it is you look at Cosmos 50, 100 chains, whatever it might look like by the end of the year. Some of those chains will be DeFi hubs, some of those chains will be security hubs, and um, Babylon's looks like it's going to be able to be some type of security hub without cannibalizing the Cosmos Hub's security function with these consumer chains.
Yeah, in fact, we are going to have a meeting with the Cosmos Hub to start thinking about integrating Babylon with the Cosmos Hub. So that's a possibility also. And actually, we also have one of our consumer chains. One of our consumer chain is Stride. And Stride is getting interchain security, replicated security, so the name has changed, replicated security. And they can also get Babylon, Bitcoin security through Babylon. So I'm just giving you some examples that it is really complementary.
Great. No, I mean, it sounds good. It sounds really good because it's hard for someone like me to understand what this is all going to look like before it actually happens. So when I was reading up on Babylon, I said, oh, is this going to pull possible consumer chains away from the hub? I don't know, but it's interesting that this is actually going to complement what's already there. And in general, I think Cosmos as an ecosystem has a really good narrative for security, even prior to this, because compared to like Ethereum bridges, we don't seem to have the worry that IBC is going to be exploited. We're going to lose a whole bunch of money moving tokens from one chain to the other. And now this shores up the validator set against different types of
Yeah.
attacks than proof of stake can normally defend against. Um, any drawbacks to this, or right now, does it seem like this is going to be, as long as the chain gets off the ground as planned, it's just going to be one more level of protection for the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it's one additional feature. Certainly, chains do not have to adopt it, but I think those that adopt it will benefit from the security.
And
By the
any
way, I
other
want to say a few words about the bridge. I think you're correct. I mean, one of the strong point of the Cosmos is the IBC. It's a really secure bridge. So basically, what happens on other ecosystem is that these bridges are secured by a very small multi-sig committee, very small, so it's very easy to hack. Now, what Cosmos IBC does is it elevates the security of a bridge to the security of the two endpoint chains, the sender chain and receiver chain. So what we're doing here, and what replicated security is also doing, is to further elevate the security by elevating the security of the endpoint chains. And so you're moving another level of security. So you can think of it that way.
does this affect how many validators are needed to make the various layer ones, quote unquote, more decentralized or more secure, or is that unrelated?
Yeah, it is related. So I can recall a particular conversation because we talked to many of our partner chains to understand what security means to them, and it's certainly different for different chains because remember, one thing about Cosmos is that different chains have very different applications, and security means very differently for different applications. So I give an example of Akash network. So Akash network does distributed cloud computing. Okay, and so for them, the paying the inflation of the token for the validators to stick on the chain, to attract the validators and the people to stick on the chain, is very expensive. It's very expensive. Like other chains, very expensive. So they would love to be able to reduce the cost of the security, so that they can use the inflation to incentivize the service provider, the people who provide the computing instead. Okay, so for them, what Bitcoin security do for them is that, hey, they say, we don't really need very fast, very short range security. Slow range security is enough for us because a lot of our transactions are happening rather slowly. We don't need to have like seconds of confirmation. We can have minutes or even hours of confirmation because our rental lease, our transaction time frame happens over days and weeks and months. So therefore, that chain can now lean more on Bitcoin security and less on their native security, and reduce the cost of native security so they can use that money, that incentivization for their applications, which is what they focus on.
Got it. All right. So it seems pretty flexible then, like you said, right? Stride might be looking for one benefit, and then you have Akash, totally different purpose for their network, being able to derive yet a different benefit. I mean, all of it is really interesting, and people that are watching this long, I think it's obvious that you're a teacher and you're able to explain this really well. So I definitely appreciate that. Did we forget anything? Because I do have one or two community questions that people have asked, but if we breezed over something that you feel is more important and needs more explanation, or something we completely forgot, we could definitely talk about it now.
No, I think your questions were great. I think we covered quite a bit of the material.
All right. I have a question from someone in my Telegram group, wants to know if you have any strategic partners, investors that you'd like to share with the audience.
Yeah, so we have so our advisor, one of our advisors is Zaki Manian.
Okay.
And he has been an advisor and also early investor in our project. So it's been really helpful for us to get started in the Cosmos ecosystem. Remember, we are a new chain. We're a new chain in the Cosmos ecosystem. So that was great. Another strong partner for us is Osmosis. So as I mentioned, we just passed a governance proposal integrating us with them. And they're the first chain that we have done a governance proposal with. And so they have been giving us a lot of feedback on our project, really great community, very technically strong community. We got a lot of feedback. And actually, even early on, we had a lot of discussion with Sarah and with Dave, the CTO. So these are our very important partners in the Cosmos ecosystem.
Got it. I actually did have a question that I forgot to ask earlier. As chains are deriving security through Babylon, is there going to be a cost to this that then the like the Babylon validator set or stakers are able to benefit from? I want to say like almost like maybe like some type of rental protocol or something like that.
Yes. So it will be in terms of gas fee. So remember that to derive the security from Babylon, a consumer chain, should open an IBC connection. So the IBC connection will involve sending messages to the Babylon chain, and those messages will consume gas fees on the Babylon chain, and that gas fee will pay for the security.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right. Another question from my Telegram community. They are mentioning that it is very difficult to gather people to kind of be part of a new chain that's launching, especially in Cosmos. There are so many chains, the market's not good. Anything specific about your chain or the way you're going to communicate to the community that will attract people here, not just validators, but also, other chains in the Cosmos, or even those that would hold the token, stake it?
Oh, so what we sense as we talk to many other chains, because the existing Cosmos ecosystem, right, is basically consists of many ecosystems of many different chains.
Yeah.
So the one thing good about our chain is that our application is actually to serve other chains. So therefore, that gives us an opportunity to talk to many, many different communities. And
So
we're
like
yes,
so really one by one, you expect as Babylon is up and running, you'll be able to go to these various chains and just kind of offer up the benefits to them. And I would imagine, you know, any chain that has any amount of, TVL or economic activity on the chain would be very interested in enhancing
yeah,
their security.
yeah. So overall, we find a lot of very receptive. The 12 chains we have on our testnet right now is our first wave, but we expect to get more and more of them on board. So I think our community will be consist of communities from these other chains who are deriving security from Bitcoin through Babylon. So yeah,
And
yeah, a lot. What? Yeah.
users of the chain, will they have any way of knowing that Babylon is being used to secure their transactions, or will this just be all hidden away, in the underlying protocol?
Yes. So very good. So we are collaborating with Kepler and also with Cosmos Station. And so if you look at the Cosmos, so for example, right, if you have a transaction, okay, on the Kepler wallet, okay, then you can go to the Cosmos Station. They have this mint scan, right? Mint scan, and mint scan will show you, oh, my transaction has been successfully confirmed with a check mark. Okay. Now, what we are working with Cosmos Station is say, hey, let's add more information to this. In addition to saying that it has a check mark, it will also tell you how many Bitcoin blocks have been built on top of this transaction. So it will tell you that, oh, not only it is confirmed by your own validator set, it's also received a confirmation from the Bitcoin network. How many blocks? If you say, oh, if I have 2 blocks built on my transaction, then what you know is that, okay, actually Coinbase, when Coinbase have a transaction with the Bitcoin network, if there's 2 blocks built on top of it, Coinbase will consider it confirmed. So
Right.
now you know, oh, I got not only my own validator confirmation, but also Coinbase level confirmation on the Bitcoin network. So that is something that's directly visible to the user of the wallet.
Interesting. And then, I mean, really, that's how people learn, right? As they see that more and more, they'll begin to understand what that means. And I think the Cosmos community in general are very education minded because we're forced to know about lots of different protocols on lots of different chains. I think I think that would be very interesting to people that even come into the ecosystem later, right? To say, well, what does that mean? What does my Juno transaction have to do with Bitcoin? And if they're seeing it in Mint Scan over and over again, I think that will be really become kind of the norm over time, where people start to say, okay, this is this much security, this is this much security. And again, I think it really builds on the narrative that the Cosmos ecosystem has a great narrative for the next bull run, just security in general. And I know Polkadot prides itself on one way, but it is only one model right now, whereas Cosmos is using many models that are actually complementary to each other. They're not actually competing, as you said in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that fits perfectly into the Cosmos ethos, which is to let 100 flowers bloom because each chain is a different application.
Yeah. All right. Well, this sounds really good. Now I'm going to have to go look even more into this. And for people that watched all the way up to the end, I always link some helpful links down below, including another interview that you did with Chango. That one was really good for like a more technical explanation of how Babylon fits into the cosmos. I'll definitely link her interview down below. And of course, Babylon's website, Medium, blog. The website's pretty helpful, actually, which is a nice, refreshing change to what we're used to in the Cosmos ecosystem. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I think it's obvious that you're a teacher, just the way you explain things and just how organized things seem to be when I go through the documents. Even though I'm not going deep into them, I could see that they're meant for people like me and a lot of the audience members who are not, in having that deep tech background. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. We want to appeal to a broad range of audience. So thank you very much for showing your appreciation.
It will definitely make a difference long term. So hopefully we could catch up again when Babylon goes live. That'll probably be an exciting time. I'll definitely reach out and we'll maybe get like a more hands-on demo of what's going on with the Babylon chain if that's possible. And yeah, man, David, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Yeah,
you.
I would like to do one shilling though.
Sure, sure.
If your audience would go to Babylon Scan, we already have an explorer, and the audience can actually already visualize and see the 12 chains in action. Babylonscan.io.
Cool. All right. No, I'll definitely link that down below as well. Thanks so much. And look forward to seeing Babylon rolled out on mainnet.
Thank you, Joe.